Hello, everybody. Wanted to go ahead and just share this with you by letting you watch live the post press conference following Richard Allen found guilty, obviously, but sentenced to 130 years. They sentenced him to 2 of the counts, not the other 2, to worry about double jeopardy. But I'm going to go ahead and let you guys watch this live video or live thing was showed on Indiana State Police.
Good morning. My name is Jeremy Piers with Indiana State Police. I'd like to thank you all for being here today and for your continued cooperation throughout the course of this trial. I'd also like to extend a special thank you to the Canal Center for allowing us to use their facility today. As we move forward, we remain committed to keeping Abigail Williams and Liberty German at the center of our focus. Their memory has guided us every step of the investigation, and the photo displayed behind us serves as a powerful reminder of why we're here and what this case has always been about. Due to the gag order, it has been some time since we have spoke publicly about this case. Now that the order has been lifted, we're grateful to be here today and speak to all of you. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce to you the speakers: Mike Patty from the families, Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett, Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter, and Carroll County Prosecutor Nick McClelland. At the conclusion of their remarks, Prosecutor McClelland will take a limited number of questions, and he has requested that all questions be directed to him. On behalf of those standing behind me here today and all those who have dedicated countless hours into this investigation, we thank you all for your continued support. I'd like to introduce to our first speaker, Mike Patty.
Thank you, Jeremy. I don't have a nice speech all prepared. It was kind of a last minute thing here, but I really wanted to take the time to send out my appreciation that justice has been served for the girls. I want to thank the jurors. Hope they get a chance to see this, that they took time out of their lives and remained open-minded and objective and was able to look at the information and deliver a verdict. For that, I will always be grateful. The community. This community has embraced our families from day one and continues to lift us up and support us. And again, for that, I'll always be grateful. I want to thank them. To the investigative team and the prosecution, thank you for staying steadfast and continuing to work towards this. It's been almost 8 years coming. If I live to make it 80, it'll almost be 10% of my life been spent working on this. And to the judge, I want to thank her as well for her steadfast staying on course, staying on track, and helping us get through this. Thank you very much. Tony.
Good morning. The end of 2016 and the beginning of 2017 completely changed the fabric of Carroll County. We lost 6 beautiful young girls, and all of that happened within a 6-month time span. My office is not a part of the investigation into the Flora fires that's being headed up by the state police. We would do anything that they would ask for us to do, and I know they're working extremely hard on that case as well. Carroll County is is a tight-knit community, about 20,000 people. It used to be a place where people didn't lock their doors. I believe that the verdict and the sentencing will help ease some of that sense of security for the people of Carroll County. The people who live here are very resilient. I think you can see that just in the families, the Germans, the Patties, the Williams. Carroll County is an amazing place to live, to work, to raise your family. I want to thank all of the people of Carroll County and the families for their patience during this investigation. I keep hearing the word closure. People are coming up to me saying, I bet that you're glad that there's finally closure. There will never be any closure in this case. The Germans and the Williams family lost their daughters, their granddaughters, their siblings. Justice, a form of justice was served, but it does not bring Abby or Libby back. These families will live every day without two of the most important people in their lives. They're missing milestones because of a low-life coward decided to take their innocent lives. They did not deserve this. Today is not closure. It is just turning the page and starting a new chapter. My heart is and always has been broken for these families. I want them to know that we stand with them, and I want to apologize to them that it took 8 years for us to get to this point. This case was quite the undertaking for the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. There are so many people with bringing it to a conclusion. You see a lot of them right here, and there are many that aren't standing up here. There are so many agencies to thank for standing by our side. Just to give you an idea of the support that we had just for the trial, we had 36 outside agencies help us for just the security during the trial. On the afternoon of February 14th, at least that many came to help us investigate this case. Everyone from detectives down to dispatchers to help investigate or just answer phones. I remember a conversation after we found the girls with Jerry Holman about whether or not we were going to take the case or Indiana State Police were going to take the case. Well, it was not my decision. It was not my decision, but I knew we didn't have the resources needed to do this on our own. Holman made a commitment that if we took the case, ISP wouldn't leave us and they would stand by our side and provide any of those resources that we needed, and they did just that. Tobe Lesenby was the sheriff at the time, and he asked ISP to stand with us. I want to thank Doug Carter and the rest of the Indiana State Police for being with us during this time. The reason justice was served today was due to one person, a person that only knows how to give. She has given herself literally for free to this investigation in different ways since about March of 2017. Kathy Shank, while filing, scanning, organizing, found a tip that led us to be here today. Throughout this investigation, especially when things happened during the month, for things that happened during the month of 2017, that was a time when Kathy was not helping us. When she would come across something that she didn't know, she would always bring that to an investigator. And every time that she brought us something and said, "Did you know this?" We knew it, except for the tip that she brought us that got us here today. To borrow a term I believe was started by Becky Patty, a saying that meant enough to me that I had it on a sticker on my computer, in my car, and on my refrigerator at home. The goal was actually to be able to say the words, and they ring true. There is zero doubt that justice has been served, and today is the day. Thank you.
I had prepared remarks today, but I decided walking in here that I wasn't going to read them. John Perrine reminded me that 2,866 days ago, this entire thing began. I didn't know what I would think, and I didn't realize today we were going to be walking into the same room where many of you were, I believe in, again, from memory, April of 2019 or that time frame. And over the course of these last many years now, several of us, me included, have been mocked and ostracized for our emotion, for our inability to answer questions that you might ask, and the thought that we're something other than human beings. I'm not going to apologize for that. I often say I wish people could see what goes on behind the scenes, not just with people dressed like me, but citizens of this county and of this city. It's amazing, amazing acts of unbelievable courage and self-service and self-sacrifice. I wish you all could have been in the courtroom today and heard the victim impact statements. I'll always remember them. And I hope you'll get the transcripts and read what was said and try and understand the context of those words, even though you weren't in the courtroom. Over the course of these last many years, there have been many investigative strategies. Any notion of a cover-up, any notion of us deciding the outcome of this, any notion of any connection to anything else is not correct. It's not correct. I've never been a detective in my entire lifetime, but I get to represent some of the best on the planet Earth. And I listened to them intently. And when they made strategy decisions associated with what the next steps would be, my job was to support them, and I stand by those decisions, every single one of them. The gag order. We lived by that. We lived by that gag order. The defense did not. And it cost a human life. Anybody that shares those photographs of those two little girls should be held accountable, whether they're in the public sphere, whether they're emailed to you, whether you found them in a place you didn't want them to see. I hope that if you ever see them, you'll picture your own children as Abby and Libby. I'll never forgive that. I will never, ever forgive that. We lived by the gag order. Documents were released from the defense that drove a public narrative that many of you talked about. And damn it, I wish I could have responded, but I was not going to violate what Judge Gall said. So they were able to get these documents out there and create a public narrative that you and many others, many of you, and
Your
many
cameraman
others
sucks.
around the globe. Baldwin and Rosier are responsible for that, not this team. The family effects, I think you'll see the words that were spoken by the folks that spoke today about their lives and how they've been forever changed, how they'll never be the same. And they said it in ways that were beautiful in some kind of a mysterious way. There's an attorney in Indianapolis by the name of Guy Relford. And I heard Guy on the radio after the verdict when a lot of hate mail came, death threats came. And I heard Guy Relford say that day on the radio, and I called him 15 minutes after he said it. And after 40 years in this business, I never thought about the jury's perspective. But he said the only people that mattered in that courtroom was the jury. And he went on to talk about, he's a very bright attorney. He went on to talk about what they can see that we can't, that you couldn't. They could see the defense. They could see the state. They could see the witnesses, feel the emotion, and they could see Richard Allen. I've never thought about that perspective because we have a singular view most times. You, me, it's human nature. Judge Gall was the keeper of the peace in that courtroom, but the people that mattered were those 12 jurors. And we have a system of justice that allows them to decide the fate of a human being. That's what our founders have established. And that's what they did. I hope you all understand that what you say and how you report matters more than you can ever possibly comprehend. This is an opportunity for us to all learn about what social media is and isn't, what we should do and what we shouldn't, and understand that their words have consequences to other human beings. I appreciated Guy's perspective, and it changed my view of the criminal proceeding. Richard Allen knew. We live in a country where people can hate. People can say things about other people. And that's okay. Hate me. It's okay. It's one of the only countries in the world where you can. So hate me if you want to. The investigative collaboration is something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life. There's no way we could possibly chronicle it or articulate it or write about it or anything. There's no way we could ever do that. We are human beings, and there were mistakes made. But there was never a mistake made that we knew was wrong when we did it. I'll crawl across shards of hot glass for Jerry Holman. Jerry Holman is not a liar. Jerry Holman gave the last 8 years of his life to something much greater than himself. We fussed with each other throughout the course of this. In conclusion, we argued with each other. I remember Tobin and I had an argument right here in this other room in April of 19, as you should expect us to. There was no groupthink. We debated each other, as you should expect us to. But then the defense spins that into incompetence. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous nonsense for Baldwin and Rozzi to have done that. And finally, most importantly, to the Delphi community and to the family of Abby and Libby. Words cannot possibly explain what we all feel. But what Nick McClellan did and the rest of the team that was associated with this, every single time it was about something other than themselves. It was about this community and that family. And we owe them a debt of gratitude that can never possibly be repaid. How about we start to heal now? How about we hit that reset button and understand that justice in this country was served, and if you don't like justice in this country, go do another one. Let's heal. Tone down the rhetoric. Stop all the politics and all the nonsense and all the conspiracy theories, and understand that we all tried the best we could. That should be the message to us and to our kids and to this most amazing place we call the United States of America. Well done. Thank you all.
Good morning. Can we all just have a little bit of a sigh of relief that this thing is over finally? The convictions come in. We've got the verdict. We got the sentence, 130 years in the Department of Corrections. And while I don't think ever this verdict or this conviction will ever bring peace to the family, I hope that they can take this sigh of relief with me to say that this part of the trial is over, that we got the conviction, that we got the sentence that brings justice for Abby and Libby. A few of the things I am going to say are going to echo what Sheriff Liggett said, what Superintendent Carter said, and what Mike Patty said. But I'd be remiss if I didn't thank some people along the way. Law enforcement, Carroll County Sheriff's Department, Indiana State Police, Department of Natural Resources, all the agencies that assisted in this investigation and the prosecution of the defendant, I want to thank. They were attacked by members on the internet for their integrity. They were called corrupt. They were called evil. And they were called liars. And they weathered that storm with professionalism and did what they could to be a shield for the families. Spent countless hours chasing down leaks of crime scene photos, countless hours attempting to scrub the internet of those crime scene photos, and countless hours trying to protect the family as best as they could. And so to them, ISP, Carroll County Sheriff's Department, DNR, the other agencies that assisted, thank you. We would not be here today if it were not for your efforts and your countless hours that you sacrificed away from your family and your friends to give us the evidence that we needed to get the conviction. I want to thank my team, Stacy Diener, James Luttrell. There is no way I could have tried this case without them. We spent countless hours working on this case, away from our families, away from our friends, and no one will understand the heart and the effort that they poured into this. So thank you. I want to thank Kathy Shank. She kept us well fed. She was the grandmother of our office, if you will. She made sure that whatever we needed, she took care of, and she never complained. And without her, we would not be here. Without her countless hours of going over filings, of scanning in documents, of looking at reports, and having the wherewithal to bring this to the attention of Sheriff Liggett.
She's
To say,
standing
"Hey,
behind
I
him,
haven't
but
seen
she's
this
short. You
before.
can't
Has
see her.
anybody followed up with this person?" Without her, we would not be here. Without her, we would not have an arrest, a conviction, and a sentence. She was the key part to this investigation. The needle in the haystack, if you will, that brought this
Kathy Shank is the
investigation
hero.
to a close to where we could make an arrest. Kathy Shank, I thank you. And finally, the family. The Williams, the Germans, the Patties. Thank all you guys. The support you gave me throughout this. Those times when I said you had to abide by the gag order, that you wanted to respond to the things that were being put out there, the allegations against you, against your family members, that you respected me to the point where you were willing to agree to abide by that gag order for the betterment of the case. The fact that you supported me throughout it, and I know there may be times you doubted, but you endured. And without your help, we wouldn't have got the conviction. And without your victim impact statements and the graceful words that you gave to the court about how this has influenced your lives, we wouldn't have got the sentence that we got. 130 years, maximum sentence on each count. And so I thank you. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Abby and Libby themselves. Libby for recording the defendant as he walked across the bridge, having the wherewithal to pull out her phone and record that individual, having the wherewithal to know that something wasn't right. Arguably the biggest piece of evidence that we had, that recording of their killer. And then to Abby for hiding the phone from the killer so that he couldn't take it with him, hiding the phone so that law enforcement could find it and get that piece of evidence that Libby had collected. Without the efforts from those two little girls, we wouldn't be here today. So Abby and Libby, thank you. I want to say we're very happy with the jury's verdict. We're elated with the judge's ruling, or not the judge's ruling, the judge's sentence. The sentence is appropriate. As Judge Gall stated in court, the aggravators outweighed the mitigators, and the heinous nature of this crime deserve a fully executed sentence. I'll end with this. I want to thank the media for keeping this case in the forefront, for keeping the tips coming in for us to investigate. But I will leave you this word of caution. Please, as Superintendent Carter said, the crime scene photos are still out there, and more may be out there in the future. Please, if you receive those, delete those. Don't forward those on. Don't re-victimize the family and the other family members. You can write whatever story you want and report however you want. You do not need those crime scene photos to do so. All it does is re-victimize
Somebody sent the
families
crime scene
and hurt the
photos
reputation of Abby and Lydia.
to a family member.
So please, if you get those,
Again.
do not forward those on. If you get any other crime scene photos,
just the
or
other day.
autopsy photos or anything, don't forward those on. As Superintendent Carter said, imagine if they were your kids, your grandkids. You can write a story without having those pieces as part of the narrative. So please do not forward those on. I want to thank the community finally. Everybody in the community locally has supported my office, supported law enforcement. The show of support from them has been just unforgettable. I appreciate everything everyone's done. I appreciate the prayers. I appreciate the handshakes, the support, everything that everybody's done throughout this course of the 8-year investigation. When this investigation started, I was actually a defense attorney. I ran for the prosecutor's office in January 1st of 2018. And I knew coming into that office that this case was one that I would have to investigate. And I made it one of my goals, not only to investigate it, but to get an arrest, have the trial, and get a conviction. And all the support I had throughout that time, I appreciate it. And so, as Trooper Pierce said, I'm going to answer a few questions. The gag order is lifted. You're more than welcome to talk to anybody up here individually afterwards if they want to talk to you. But I will take a few questions here and now. It's not easy. It's hard to put yourself in their shoes because I've never had a child die. And so it's very difficult. It took a lot of phone calls, text messages, meetings. A lot of it was, hey, try not to read that stuff that you see on the internet, which is easier said than done. But a lot of it was just moral support and leaning on each other to say, we can't violate the gag order. Let's keep our eye on the ball. We need to get the trial and we want to try to get the conviction, and then we can talk. And so it was just a lot of words of encouragement between each other, moral support, text message, phone calls, those kind of things. Go ahead. It wasn't a fight. She was just commenting about some things that were said at sentencing, and I'm just going to keep those things to myself. Well, I don't know if she got up in my face. I'll just keep those things to myself. She was just commenting on things that were said at the sentencing. Yes, ma'am. Well, it's not up to the defense. It's up to the defendant. I'm not going to repeat his name. He's the defendant at this point. And so he has 30 days to file notice with the court that he wants to appeal. If he doesn't file that notice, then there is no appeal. And so once he files that notice, we'll deal with it accordingly. We'll work with the Attorney General's office to represent the state, and we'll give them whatever support that they need in order to draft a response to that appeal.
But I guess given all the questions and all the press set up here and how frustrating it was, your confidence in the security of this verdict and then this maximum sentence?
I feel confident in the verdict and the sentence. But again, I'm not on the Court of Appeals, so they'll have to make that decision if it comes to them. So, Mr. Well, at this point, we don't believe any other actors are involved. We don't have any evidence to support that. If evidence comes out in the future to support that, we'll obviously investigate that. We're not going to say, hey, no, we got the conviction. We're not listening to what you have to say. But at this point, we have no other evidence showing that any other actors were involved. If Richard Allen himself, the defendant, wants to come forward and give us more information, we'll gladly accept that. The
Now, if you
amendment
caught that,
charges where we added the 2 counts.
if
of
Richard
contempt,
Allen would want to come
I did
forward
that because
and
I thought it was
say
appropriate at the time.
something, I find that interesting.
Hold on just a minute. Do you have a question?
Yeah, can you tell us, or if you have to speak on behalf of other people, how it makes you
I think, I hate to speak for everybody, but I think, I hate to be cliche and use the word justice, but justice, vindication, to show that these people standing behind me weren't liars, weren't corrupt. You know, those hate mails and hate messages continue to come in from some podcasters, some YouTubers. But I think just justification that, okay, we conducted a clean investigation. We presented the evidence as best we could. And the jury were convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty. Yes.
Does this now mean that all the other men are cleared? Can you use that word?
Who is all the other men?
The other men that were looked at during the course of the investigation, if you always said you couldn't say that they're cleared, can you now say they're cleared?
I may not use that word clear, but what I can tell you is we don't have any other evidence that ties them to the offense at this time. What do you mean looking into the Anthony Schatz profile? Well, it didn't fade it out. He was convicted of what, 34, 35 counts? Not that we have any information of that right now.
Do you think the timing of today's sentence, this is 5 days away, this is an emotional time of year.
Sure. There's no significance in my mind to the timing. Once a person is convicted, they have a right to be sentenced within 30 days. And so I think the timing just was to try to get it in before the holidays because a lot of people do have time off and and the courthouses are closed. So there's no significance in my mind to the timing, but that it worked in everyone's schedule.
It's the time of year when people are with people they love, with people the world, they're not,
I'm not sure I understand your question, but yeah, regardless of the time of the year, I imagine it's hard for the family to not be with the victims any day, whether it's somebody's birthday or somebody's anniversary, the other holidays we have out throughout the year. You know, Christmas is probably a special.
I know. I
Again,
thought that the
I don't
Indiana
expect
State
this verdict or
Police
the sentence to
press
bring peace
conference
to
piece of
the
this
Patties, the Germans, and the
would
Williams.
show as
I don't
much.
know
Unfortunately, they
what at
have the
this point could ever
question.
bring peace to a family
There's a
member that loses a child
newscast
or a
that
parent that loses a child.
you can kind of
What I
almost hear
hope
the
is
questions,
what I said. I hope it's a sigh of relief that this portion is over.
but
that
they
the
were
conviction,
asking
as it is now
about
stands,
other
and that
men
he was sentenced to the
involved. They
maximum
were
possible
asking
sentence.
about
I hope that is a
the
sigh of
Anthony
relief
Schatz
for them.
profile
And I hope
was
that
the
they
last
now, like
question before
Superintendent Carter,
this.
can continue
And as you
to heal
heard, his answers were
and
they
start
don't
to
have
put
any
this chapter
evidence
behind them.
to prove that there's
That's why
anybody
the
in
political
there
media
else
sees to it
involved,
recirculate
although
these
they're
versions, because all that
uh,
does,
still
as Mr.
willing to
Erskine
hear
said when the victim
information and
impacts
stuff
it's
from
like a
that.
scab
And
or
then
a
I
wound
think
that
it
scabs over
interesting for
that's
him to make the
constantly
comment if
ripped.
Richard Allen would
It's
want
just, it's a
to
constant reminder
say
that
something.
our loved ones are put in this vulnerable position. My opinion is if the Indiana code allows criminal charges to be pressed for those kind of thing, if something comes in my office, criminal charges will be pursued.
This
if
is
the
him
criminal code
talking
allows it.
about people leaking crime
He
scene
can
photos.
he can ask some questions after we're done here. So I'm not going to concede that. No, go ahead.
The judge spoke today to defendant's conduct, based on role he got throughout the
Sure.
trial. Your take from your professional perspective in spite of the cases, I'm sure you've watched it throughout the case. What was your reaction now to that?
It's hard for me to see him because the way we were seated, especially during the trial, we were kind of all crammed. We call it the well. We're kind of all crammed in there. So it's kind of hard for me to focus on him. And the way I try cases is I'm pretty focused on what I'm doing. And I try not to get sucked into the reactions of other people. I like to watch what the jury's reactions to certain things are. And so a lot of the stuff that she commented on, I didn't see from him. What I did notice from him is what I said in my sentencing recommendation, just the lack of remorse and the lack of regret, the lack of emotion, I guess, when the images of the victims are put up on the screen. You know, as a father, when I see those things, and you've probably seen me up here and other places, I get a little emotional about it, and it's hard not to. And so the lack of those things kind of struck me. I didn't see him roll in the eyes of the judge, of course, but obviously never a good thing to do. So those are my comments on that. Oh. Just one more, then I'll be good. Yeah, sorry.
What piece of evidence, like from his demeanor to any parts of your case, what piece of evidence do you think did it for the jury and then to also elicit this maximum sentence? What do you think got it?
Oh gosh, I don't know what did it for the jury. I think it was a culmination of everything that we had. I think once you start stacking that evidence against him, and as it stacks up, it's hard to say that the defendant isn't bridge guy. And if you can accept that he's bridge guy, you can accept that he's the killer. And that to me is the bottom line. And so
You have a message for Richard Allen. You can talk with him face to face right now after all this has been said and done. What would you say?
I think I would just echo what the superintendent said and what Sheriff Liggett said and some of the things that were said by the victims' families at court. If he truly wants to apologize to the families and admit to what he's done, now's the time to do that. So
Can you say today, can you say today that Carroll County is safer than it was 8 years ago?
I believe so.
What steps have been taken to make it safer?
Well, I think it's safer in the sense that people can have that sigh of relief to say, okay, we got the guy, we got the conviction. And so I think in that sense, it's safer. I've always thought I was born and raised here in Carroll County. I left, of course, to go to, and so this has always been my hometown. It's been my hometown for 3 generations or 4 generations of my family. And so I've always thought it's a safe place. And the things that Sheriff Liggett said, the thing that the victim said, and the sentencing, that wasn't fluff, that we didn't lock our doors and that we knew everybody else. Those are true statements. This is a traditional, small, Midwestern town. And so I think it's always been safe. I think there can be that pressure off of people now to say, okay, I feel better. We got the guy, we got the conviction, and we know he's going to be in prison for 130 years. So
That'll be it for the questions today and for the press conference. I would just like to say thank you for all for coming out. As you go about your day, please remember the most important part of this entire thing, and that's the 2 girls that are behind us today. So as you go about your reporting, please do that and have a safe trip home. Thank you.
So I will be doing some clips to try to capture a better sense of the questions that was answered, specifically also because he's asking of if other people are, about if they believe that other people are involved, and then specifically asking about, if, the Anthony Schatz connection. And I just find the response interesting. Not just that he was like, okay, we don't have evidence, but the comment that, if Richard Allen wants to come forward and say something. The other thing that he was talking about was the in the defense attorney, female defense attorney, I guess had got up what some people are describing, at least some of the newscasters were describing, got up in McLeland's face, and they were trying to figure out what was going on. So he kind of wouldn't talk about what that was, but about stuff that, so I find that kind of interesting, just the way that was all phrased. So the interesting thing is, Doug Carter really basically sat here and was like, really, up against the defense team about them specifically leaking information about things that went out, about leaking stuff that they were talking about how they followed the gag order, but the defense team wasn't following the gag order. We got the information. If you paid attention to the community post I did, one of the things that was released by the defense team was that basically they advised Richard Allen to basically not participate in the discussions they normally have with a defendant in order on his behalf to kind of talk to the judge and give information where they would sentence him less than the max, right? And what stuff in there. So they asked, the defense team asked, basically instructed Richard Allen not to participate in that, so he didn't. And, you know, if there wasn't a defense pushing so hard for this appeal, which is said that the defense attorneys left there to immediately go file it, which Richard Allen did ask for attorneys and to be provided, you know, by the state again. But hold on one second. There's Miss Page. Hello.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
I think we're doing okay. We just finished kind of watching the press conference, and unfortunately, honestly, the state police's recording of the press conference was worse than some of the news. You couldn't really hear the questions, but that were at the end. So I hate when they don't give a microphone to the reporters who are asking the questions, right? But but I'm going to do clips and stuff of that for people can hear it, because obviously there's some questions in there that we're interested in, because they asked about, one asked about other men being involved, right? Other people being involved. And they asked about the Anthony shots. And the first question that he got in regards to that was, you know, they don't have any other evidence of anybody involved, but just because they convicted Richard Allen, they're not closed from hearing information or getting information from that. And then McLeland made the comment of, but if, you know, if Richard Allen would want to share information, I just think that's interesting that he even commented that way.
Yeah.
To say if Richard Allen, because if they didn't possibly believe there's anything in there or something else in there, why would they comment about, oh, well, if Richard Allen would want to tell us, as some people, because I think that discussion would have happened to possibly lower his sentence if he would have given anybody up who possibly helped with any of that stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, I just got home from work, so I haven't heard the entire thing. I just know the sentencing outcome. So it's cool to learn it all alongside with all of you guys and everybody in the chat.
yeah.
See what happened.
Well, and they did so she only sentenced for counts 3 and 4, because the defense said that it basically that it would be double jeopardy if they convicted the other 2. So she did both sentences and gave the max for each of those sentences of 65 years each. But honestly, that would open the door if there is anybody possibly involved in any other way. Richard Allen, they have negotiation time because he got the max.
Right.
You know what I mean? He got 130 years, which basically he's in there for life.
Yeah.
So
there is the opportunity, if he did want to, you know, make any admissions, if anybody else had a part to play, this would be the time, because he would be like, I'm not going down for this long, like when it's not just me kind of scenario.
Right.
Yeah, that could be the case.
I mean, honestly, if there was somebody on the outside who's involved, I mean, you would have to think, is he scared about giving that up? You know what I mean? Is he worried about giving that up?
Well, I think that's why a lot of people tend to lean towards there isn't anybody else, because if there is, why wouldn't Richard Allen, make that admission and not hold all the blame for himself? But you've got to think of the bigger picture and the type of situation it could actually be. Like, it could be a situation where he does think his life and his family's life is in danger if he does spill anything.
Right.
We don't know.
SP74, if you read the post from the news that I put in the community post, the news did report how it was the defense who was stating and pointing it out, that it would be double jeopardy and that he could not be charged in that. I'm not saying that's why Judge Gold dropped it. I'm just pointing out that the defense did bring that issue up in information that they released to the media before the sentence happened. So yes, you can't be tried for that. I find it interesting that the two that she, I guess, decided to keep was the straight murder charges versus the felony murder charges as far as appeal comes. But, an appeal for something to go back to case is really unusual. But they announced that, Judge Gold did ask him, do you need attorneys provided for his appeal? He confirmed yes. Now they stated that the attorneys that would come out and be assigned supposedly are not going to be Baldwin and Rozzi. So I just find all of that interesting. I mean, they did talk about how they well set up,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I just think that they got a lot of stuff set up for appeal, but I feel like there was a lot of stuff that wasn't set up for reasonable doubt, really. You know what I mean? Other than the Odinist piece of stuff that was out there. But I mean, that's going to be what all comes out, right? In the appeal, all of the stuff that the defense claims was in there. But, we have to realize that, at this point, you have a group of jurors who came in, listened to the evidence of what was presented, and found him, guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think Baldwin and Rozzi would be a good choice. I don't, for the money that they were paid for this case. I'm sorry, especially I'm really surprised, honestly, because originally, like, I remember we showed a video when they first got picked. Originally, Rozzi was supposed to be like the head of the defense team itself, and but when you look at the payments and stuff that came out, the main payment and stuff went to Baldwin, right? And so
Yeah.
that just kind of shocks me because I wasn't overly impressed with Baldwin, period. I mean, I think of either of the two, Rozzi was seemed more informed, more ready to go than Baldwin did.
I will say, though, this is purely my opinion, but just based on, Rozzi at trial and McClelland at trial, like, you can distinguish even just between the transcripts, like how professional McClelland is compared to Rosie, or Baldwin. You can just see the difference. It's like there was a lack of preparation, but in some ways I felt like they almost didn't even care. It's a bit embarrassing.
Well, I mean, we knew at the beginning everything they kept filing was and it's normal tactics for a defense. It was delay, right? It was always delay this. Well, and then a lot of it was, and honestly, I mean, Baldwin's success of cases that have been in Indiana, big case that he did, was just because of probable cause affidavit and it being dropped out. And that's
Right.
how he found they found a triple murderer innocent because he got the probable cause affidavit thrown out.
Yeah, and it's like that's what he tried to do in the Delphi case too. That's the first thing they attacked was the
Right.
probable cause and everything. Yeah.
I really am curious if McLeland honestly, and I don't know technically how that all works. I know we looked at where that gets turned in to the courts, but if there'll be anything filed against Baldwin and Rozzi just for, and I don't mean criminal, I mean against their actual, code of ethics that we reviewed about the leaking and stuff that went out. And, maybe you can argue about the crime scene photos, although Baldwin changed his story from this got stolen from my office to, oh, well, he's a part of the case. I was sharing details with him. Well, hell, you've got, Baldwin saying that, but then you have when documents are filed, they were releasing details and stuff in it. And I know you hadn't watched the thing page, but one of the things kept talking about, and I found it interesting because McLeland actually said it, was talking, they were talking, and we've always said how brave and stuff that Libby was, and the forethought of taping this. Could you imagine if they didn't even have the video
I
of
know.
Bridge Guy? Because I don't think they'd ever know. They just wouldn't know. But
It's kind of. Sorry, go ahead.
He did specifically acknowledge Abby, and he said about Abby hiding the phone.
I knew it.
We talked about that.
Yeah, we
We
did.
talked about it being underneath her, that when they were together and had to cross over the river, that he probably got the girls to separate. And when, Libby's sitting here now getting undressed and being victimized, that she could have passed the phone and stuff to Abby.
It could have been earlier on as well, unless they did specify when they think that happened. But I know we did definitely talk about that. And we also talked about the fact of, how did that video start? Was it just because they saw, creepy guy, so Libby started the video? Or was it something, was she filming Abby, walking across the bridge the first time to kind of congratulate her, at the end, and then she came and saw that there was a man behind her. But whatever happened there, like you just said, a huge piece of evidence was taken by Libby because she had the forethought to do that, and both of those girls had the insight to hide that phone. They knew they needed it. And it's just devastating to think about it that way because of obviously everything that happened to them. And they probably had the foresight to know that something bad was going to happen to them. And now, because of that Bridge Guy video, I believe it helped to get Richard Allen. But we know for a fact that it's also helped to find other predators and everything in Indiana, in Delphi, these predators that are targeting children. Libby and Abby have already helped other children so much.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It has linked, and if anybody's new to watch stuff that's in there, and I'm trying to think, I think it was it the Norfleet video? I'm trying to think which one. But where I go and show all of the predators in Delphi that have been busted.
Yeah, you also, she also made a video, I think it may be like a year ago or more now, but it's dedicated, just to Abby and Libby and what they've done for children since. And you show the statistics, before they were murdered and after the girls were murdered, and the change in the amount of people that have been arrested and that they're looking at,
Oh, right. More than doubled. More than
Yeah,
doubled reports.
more than doubled in the first year, I believe.
Right.
So that's
Right.
another video you guys should take a look at as well. Yeah.
And that one I showed for how to report online
Yes.
for CSAM, how to use NetMech and stuff to do that. But, you know, I think, you know, the one thing about the case when you don't have like a guilty plea and somebody who confesses and then has to tell you all the details, you know, also with the appeal, and not even if you didn't even get the appeal, not that he would come and tell us exactly everything that would go on, but I still think there's a lot of questions pending out there that still never got answered for the case.
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
part of the other reason, you know, that there's a lot of confusion, and that also supports people conspiracy theories and trying to say all this other stuff. You know,
Mhm.
the reason that can also happen, I will say this is the one thing that I disagree, well, maybe not just the one thing, but with Judge Golan is that I think it should have been aired publicly.
Yes.
And that way, if somebody wants to tell you wrong information, they could easily pull up and show you, okay, well, here's the testimony.
Yeah.
This is what actually was said,
Yeah.
rather than you and I've seen, you
Oh
know,
God.
literally stuff that came out of information from, you
The
know, and we check multiple sources of information that came out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you've got somebody reporting to everybody that something totally different happened in the
Was
courtroom.
said. Right. Right. And it literally the whole trial process just felt like a blur because every single day we were trying our best to literally go through every single news source, anything that people were documenting, like the Carroll County Comet, loads of different news articles, um, watching the news as well, like on YouTube whenever I could because I'm in a different time frame. But you are correct, yeah, JSD. When we would look for something, like I was using the Carroll County Comet for most of my accurate information, but we were going through everything to see, you know, what was being said.
Right.
Um,
And
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 you could
and you
you
both,
could look
you
at
and I,
Fox News. Yeah, yeah. So you could look at Fox News, and it would be an article, and you'd be like, okay, and then you'd read something from somewhere else, and they'd have a different piece of information that media article didn't have. So we're like,
right.
is that true? Was this actually said? It's so
Well,
confusing.
and even the way reporters perceived information they were listening to, right?
Correct,
They
because
would sit here and somebody would hear something, and I found that the most interesting, right? Somebody could hear something in the courtroom, but yet, you know, you go and you're like, okay, you know, the Star who got in there, the local paper who got in there, a news channel person who was in there, somebody who said something out, and it was like they heard the same thing, but their perception of it was totally different. But we're not even talking about maybe misperception. We're talking about people who are
literally making shit up.
deliberately lying to people,
Yes. And there's a
you
lot
know?
of that when, you know, there's people who believe, even still, that Richard Allen is innocent, and that's fine. You can believe whatever you want, but do not push false information onto people just to make your opinion look stronger. You know, like that's
Right,
just not what you do. You just don't do
right.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. The Long Island serial killer, I mean, we don't get to see any information on that, which he just got another seventh charge of murder on him. And I mean,
Hmm.
you know, that's the other thing, is because they have so much information, and federal charges too. Now, federal charges, the other thing for what I track and go over is that when you have a child pornography or CSAM case, and it gets charged federally by the FBI, right?
Yeah.
That's not public. You you may hear that the person got arrested and that maybe they're being charged by the feds. But
You
after
won't
that,
know.
the stuff is all secret. So it takes me a while to hunt down and find out information of somebody locally who we had. Like I just shared one case that the FBI just put forward of a guy in Muncie. And it was right after I did the post for today. And they don't have the details of it. The news isn't posting on there because how horrific the details are of you know, and
Yeah.
disgusting that the details are. Well, here's the thing. So I go to look at this guy. I'm trying to find information from him. He brings in there. They're not saying what the charges are. They're not doing it. And I don't know whether they're going to go proceed locally or whatever, but the FBI is who gave the tip. But it's interesting because a lot of people don't go look into these. And some of these people I look into and I find out, you know, like Brent Eastman, he was arrested in Anderson, but yet when I go and look into him more, I find out actually he lived in Delphi. He lived in Anderson now, but he originally lived in Delphi. So, but the guy in Muncie, and I haven't talked to Paige since I posted that, but the guy in Muncie that I found who's young, he's 27, he's working at Ball State University.
I did see you share that. Yeah.
Yep. And so it's like, did they reveal that in the information? No, but a lot of times they cover that crap up because they don't want news about the school or something getting out, and they want their people to be able to have information and stuff out. But we have a trend of very horrific, graphic, torturistic, aggravating factor CSAM that has been busted tremendously, which is what the level was of what Keegan Kline had on his devices and stuff like that, which is usually a very low percentage that involve torturistic stuff as well as very young age, meaning toddler and infant. That was on his stuff too. And when you look at that, and then you look at what they said Richard Allen had been searching currently in his web browser of October of 2022, and that takes a long time. They didn't get his stuff, and his other devices, and then they never found his 2017 phone.
And I feel like a lot of people just kind of skim over that information. They're not interested in the search history and everything because they can't prove that it was Richard Allen, supposedly, who made those searches. But if you actually do your research and you look at what was searched on that device, you can kind of put two and two together and that is Richard Allen based on the searches made. And because some of it can relate to the Delphi murders in a way from the things that he was searching. It shows you what he is interested in, what he wanted to watch on Netflix, etc.
Right.
And that paired, and that all paired with his behavior while in prison. The kind of disgusting behavior that made the jury look away when they were being shown. I'm not going to go into detail of what we know he did, but several things to himself. Let's just say that he did that to himself. And I said to you, didn't I, JSD, for the longest time, when we talked about Richard Allen, looked into Richard Allen, I still could not come up with what type of person is this man. I couldn't myself even figure that out. But from learning his behaviors in prison, his search history on his devices, and the fact that his device from 2017 is missing, just made me be able to put something together where I do think he has a very, very dark mind. I think he's twisted. And I watched John Kelly Profiler. I'm sure a lot of you in the comments have have watched John Kelly yourself. He's a brilliant YouTuber, but he went into detail about the kind of profile of Richard Allen based on that information I just said. And he even said it reminds him of somebody who also takes pleasure in hurting themselves, just like others. And that's exactly what I think now. I think that he enjoys harming others, but also himself, which is the most, crazy thing I can even think of, really. But I do think that Richard Allen is that type of man.
Well, and he
Now,
told the psychologist that his intentions were to sexually assault them. And then so the question is, of the few that he encountered along the trail, why did he choose Abby and Libby? When
yeah,
you have that he passed other teenage girls who were a little bit older, and he didn't do anything to them. You could argue there's multiple girls. Well, there were multiple girls that he took. Then you've got where he sees a female he encounters when he's standing on that very first side platform of that bridge.
mhm,
And
yeah,
and her comments, I mean, both of them said comments that you've got to recognize, where the girl said he looked like he was in a hurry
yeah.
when
And
he
he was
first passed.
unfriendly. He was unfriendly. He didn't want to say hello. He didn't smile. He left an impression on every witness for some reason, which is why they remembered it so distinctively.
Hello, CJK. Yes, and you've got also that he sees Betsy Blair. She's by herself. He's right there at the bridge. I mean, then it makes you argue. So why would he have that the two girls pass and he'd go there? He doesn't know that there's no parents with them or
No,
other friends with them, or that are farther behind or whatever. He doesn't know that. And
no,
he uses the term he lays in wait. But for him to sit there and do it, and I've told Paige this a bunch of times, and we've agreed with this. I don't, I argue with the phrasing maybe that he used, where he says that the van spooked him. Well, if the
yeah,
van spooked him at about 2:32ish, he goes across. They move again. They go across the water. Then
mhm,
that phone stops moving and stays exactly where that location is. We basically know that he spent another hour, 15 minutes there. He's not seen till almost 4:45, walking on 300 North. So if he was spooked by the van, and the van is what made him decide to kill them,
yeah. He
then
was
why is he with their
impulsive.
bodies for another, or with them basically,
Yeah.
and their bodies for an hour and 15 more minutes?
Yeah, like you just can't get away from the timing of this entire abduction and murder, because the time that Betsy Blair was at the bridge, saw Bridge Guy, the time that Abby and Libby were seen by her passing towards the bridge, the timestamps that we have of the Snapchats taken by Libby, the time that they were apprehended by Bridge Guy, there is just no other way there could be anybody else except Richard Allen. No other male was seen. No one says they saw Bridge Guy at a different time. And Richard Allen himself doesn't say that he saw a strange man or Bridge Guy at the exact time. And Richard Allen's statement of what time he was there changed 3 times
Right.
over the past 5 years. It was 3 times. So yeah, you can't get away from it, in my opinion. You can't.
Well,
So
Sharon, I'm sure that definitely is your opinion, but honestly, you can't say that he's innocent, because he has been found guilty by a jury.
precisely.
So not a podcast or YouTube,
Yeah.
or
You can't just,
individuals who have pre-heard notions about the case from
yeah,
people who want to influence it. It was people who went in there
Yeah.
heard information and stuff about it. And just like they said in the, they said in the interview that we just heard, or the press conference, you know, it's hard for them to take back listening to Richard Allen's own words of confessing that he did it, and specifically confessing that he did it to his own wife and mother.
And people also seem to forget that we didn't hear every single confession, just the majority. I don't know if any more info will come out along with transcripts in the future about this trial. Like, I don't know if we will ever know more about any of the other things that might have been said or mentioned, or other things that people are wondering and are still confused about. We all sit here and agree there are still little things we are confused about. But when you do look at every single thing that they have on Richard Allen, I mean, JSD even talked about it in a video, before he was even sentenced as guilty by the jury. We can even take away the ballistic evidence, just take away that shell casing, that gun, all of that, and just look at what else we do have.
Right.
And when we had that conversation, I still believed he was guilty.
Yep.
And it's just like, you have to do your own research. Everyone is their own person. You have your own mind. Don't let anybody sway, what you think, but you have to do your own research. You can't just stand on one point as to why you think he's innocent. You have to look at everything.
And if you haven't watched the show that I did last night, I did a show basically covering who wrote cleared on Richard Allen's tip form, because that tip form never got entered into the Orion system, which I've covered over a year ago when they first brought forward him. And I guess that's 2 years ago now. And then when they had it, he wouldn't have popped up because it was never even entered into the Orion system. And, and right, CJK, he doesn't have an alibi. Cryptex was here. I don't know if he's still out there right now, but he was.
That's a good point as well that you made. He does not have an alibi. Nobody in his family brought forward an alibi. And people are still harping on the Odinism and Brad Holder, etc., when he has a very strong alibi.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It was not him.
Right.
That's why you need to look at everything for yourself. You just have to.
And I think that the piece that the Indiana State Police as well as the FBI are handling are all of the connections between CSAM, or as they called legally, child pornography. I think that those all connections of everything that led into this group is been out there. I mean, if you watch in the community post, I don't post all of them. I post the main ones and some that I think are connected, which I posted another man busted in another state, but he was caught from having victims in multiple states. And one of those states, of course, were in Indiana. But I think the FBI is managing that aspect and piece of it. And if they don't have DNA of Richard Allen, but remember, back in the day, you do cases, you don't have to have forensics DNA when somebody admits that they're there, admits they're there during the time of the murders, admits that they're parked where the person is parked, admits that he's wearing the clothes that's being seen on the video, right?
Yeah.
All of that stuff.
Tried to change his time 3 times.
Right. Yep.
And he was physically seen by more than one witness. And when those witnesses were shown the video of Bridge Guy, they all confirmed that that was the man they saw.
CJK, they did ask, there was 2 questions in the audience. I'm going to do there's another newscast that kind of, you can kind of hear the questions. I hate when they don't give the microphone to the reporters who are asking the questions in the post press conference. So there were 2 questions asked. The first question that was asked about any other men involved.
Yeah.
And what McLeland stated is we don't have any evidence of anybody else being involved. And then he said, however, he said, just because we've convicted Richard Allen doesn't mean that we're not willing to hear any information that anybody may have. And then his statement was, and if Richard Allen wants to share any information, which is very interesting that the way he said it. So I'm going to create shorts to show those clips for you guys can see it and listen to McLeland's response. And then the other question that was on the side was about Anthony Schatz. And you couldn't specifically hear very well, but they did ask about Anthony Schatz. And he said, well, you know, that basically about Keegan being convicted of, you know, the counts that he was convicted of. And again, it was open to, you know, what evidence and stuff that they have. And that's basically, you know, it.
Yeah.
They don't have any connecting evidence. Remember, in the pretrial hearing, it was Chris Cecil who stated that we don't have any digital connection from the Kleins to Richard Allen. Well, of course they're not. The damn 2017 phone is gone. And you've got, you know, Keegan, who kept the phone he was using that then at the time back.
Deleted
or it was hidden for him. And then, you know, then by the time he got home, he had 3 days to delete and remove a whole bunch of crap. And that's why he was charged for obstruction of justice, because he deleted all that stuff.
When it comes to Anthony Schatz, let's just say that, we don't know whether other phones were used in the crime, if they did take part in this crime, right? So if a burner phone, for example, was used and disposed of, never found, that also could pertain to Richard Allen or the murders or whatever. Like there's crucial things that are missing,
right?
Which of course is gonna cause them to possibly not be able to get the full picture.
Yep.
And we did discuss this before, where we kind of thought that, you know, they found Bridge Guy finally after all of those years, but was he the lesser player in this? And is there someone or other, more than one other, possibly, that could have had some sort of involvement? It might not have even been that they took part, but was anything shared to anyone? You know, like when we talk about CSAM, was anything like that shared to do with Abby and Libby? Because that is involvement right there, even if you've received images or whatever, or knowledge that this was going to take place.
Well, and he admitted that he was going to sexually assault the girls. And that's why I say bullshit about the whole van thing, because when he says the van spooked him and he crossed the water, but he still spends an hour and 15 minutes with them. And what was his plan if he was going to sexually assault them anyway?
Right.
What was he going to do with them? What was that plan? And if you so he admitted that he had, molested.
Yeah.
All right. Now there were later on confessions that, in my opinion, I believe that his defense said, you know, you've been saying way too much shit. We need you to act crazy and we need you to say stuff that's not true.
Well, it's the only way you can kind of retract your own confessions, right? Is by doing that.
Right.
Oh, he was just crazy the whole time.
Well, and
You
if he, usually people who molest people, it's always close to somebody they know, right? They talk about that. Most of the time a molestation happens from somebody who they know. It's a family member, right? It, you know, it can be a father, an uncle, whatever.
Right.
But you know, when you think of, is he going to go now out and try to physically attack somebody? What would make him do that? 3 beers doesn't make you go do that.
Especially when
Randomly
you have a
leaving your
history of
mother's house
being an
all of a
alcoholic.
sudden, which I would argue he's leaving his mother's house and it's information while he's in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
He leaves his mother's house and he goes, and he sits here and takes off and leaves, says he
Mhm.
picked up a 6-pack, drank 3 beers,
Yeah.
says the 2 comments contradict themselves. He said it's warm that day. So he goes home to get a jacket and he goes back to the trail. Well,
Right.
if it's warm that day, why are you overly worried about the jacket? But he gets the jacket. And what else do we know he gets? He has his box knife from work and he's got his gun.
Right.
And he
He
takes
could
them
have
there.
other things, but we're just not aware.
So he just gets that, walks past 3 girls, doesn't worry about another lady who sees him, and then sits here and worries about this bridge, this particular bridge, for the girls to pass the bridge. And he's not worried. Why didn't he wait for a single girl by herself then to walk by
Yeah.
instead of 2?
Like when they say, you know, it wasn't premeditated, he just kind of went out there on the off chance looking for someone to harm. But everything that we know counteracts that. Like this seems so premeditated, so planned. Because I said, if it wasn't, he had to be the luckiest guy ever to get Abby and Libby at the time he did, walk past all these people. He had no concerns. He was lucky enough that they were alone. Like, he would not have known any of this info. It's just, there's no chance that he was that lucky
Well,
to go out
that
there
he was so
without
lucky
planning.
that somebody was happening to make an arrangement to meet her, who happened to be a pedophile with a fake profile,
Right.
who they admit had set up other times to meet girls. Although in court for Richard Allen, for Keegan Kline, they stated Keegan never went to meet a girl and never paid any girl for anything. So what does that leave open? And yet they say that Tony Kline was accessing the Anthony shots.
Right. So, and we know that that girl who came forward, her name was Kayla. She said that she was communicating with Anthony Shots, and when she went to meet him, a meeting was arranged. She went there with a friend. You know, nothing happened. He didn't show up, but she got messages from Anthony Shots saying that he saw her there with her friend and he would slit her throat, you know, if she did that again.
Yeah, he should slit her throat for bringing somebody
For
with her.
bringing someone with her.
Shane says,
So,
feels like
if
Nick left the
Keegan-
door open. Shane, I do too. I think if there was nobody else involved, McLeland, or if he didn't think maybe, and I don't, it could be as simple as involved in setting up the meeting. Okay.
Right.
Let's put it as that little, just setting up for them to be there.
Yeah.
If you have that information about that, here's that morning she's communicating and stuff back and forth, who did she finally tell, which she didn't realize till later, that she was getting a ride from her sister? So somehow that all happens, that she's not going to go out there, communicates that she's going there. Anthony Shots tells people, Oh, yeah, I was supposed to meet her, but I went out there and she never showed up. Okay, well, Anthony Schatz just basically said he was there, right?
Right.
But if McLeland thought no chance in hell, nothing else, this is it, that we're all done.
Yeah.
I think he would have just stopped it at, we have no evidence that anybody else was involved, period. Done. That's all he would say.
There's so many pointers when talking about Anthony Shots, which is why you need to go and see JSD's video that's like 3 hours long. Because
My marathon
honestly,
show. My marathon show.
honestly, there are so many points that are listed in that video with evidence, with factual information to show you why we think there is a connection between Anthony Shots and Abby and Libby's murders. Right? There
Think
are
how
so
unlucky.
many.
Think how unlucky Libby would have to be that for days this Anthony Schatz keeps talking to her that whole weekend when it realizes she's out from school because it's basically 4
4-day
days
weekend, yeah.
and wants to meet with her, and then at the same time that a pedophile
Murderer.
fake profile online is scheduling and talking to meet with her, that it just so happens some other guy happens
On
to
the
go
very
to the
same
woods at that
day.
time.
Yeah. He was exactly there at the time the girls were, you know, it's just, and he was on that bridge guy was standing on that bridge before Abby and Libby ever arrived. And when Abby and Libby arrived at the bridge, he was nowhere to be seen until 2:13. So he had the knowledge. He must have had the knowledge to hide himself in wait for someone to come across that bridge. And why would he do that again when he's seen so many girls?
Well, and I think I'll share this with people too. I shared some information that was gone out before about a PT Cruiser. And what I would like to share with you guys is this bit of information. I also found out that Richard Allen's mother also owned a PT Cruiser.
Mm-hmm. And who else's mother did we find out also had a PT Cruiser a very long time ago?
Tony Klein.
Exactly.
But we didn't realize that Richard Allen's mother had a PT Cruiser. And remember, he went out to Peru.
Yeah.
He left his house and he went out to Peru.
Apparently, he told his mum after that visit that he had to leave to go to work. And we know that is untrue. He obviously did not go to work. Even in his own statement, he says that he went and bought some beers and drunk 3 of them and, you know, everything that JSD just explained.
Well,
so
and you
why
know what?
lie to your mum?
If he also didn't do it, why would they not put his mother up there?
Yeah.
Right? And say, hey, he was out at my house. He seemed fine.
This is what we wanted to know so bad. And probably what I'm still kind of frustrated about myself is I would love to know where Kathy was, because he came home after killing those girls on the 13th. How long was he alone? Was she away? Was she working? Like, what was the situation? And then the next day is Valentine's Day. You're telling me after being married for however long they've been together since they were teenagers in high school, they didn't have some sort of thing planned for Valentine's Day where she saw him at least or talked to him? You know, there's so much even with what she could say. So yeah, I'm interested.
Well, and neither his mother or Kathy Allen was at the hearing today.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know if they decided not to be there because basically the defense team had already said Richard Allen wasn't participating in the information and the discussion he could have had to try to get the judge to lower his amount, right, of time by doing this interview. He wouldn't do it because the defense team, recommended him not to do it
What the
because they're going to appeal. They came out with the stuff saying that Richard Allen still says he's completely innocent, and that they basically set up all these documents to appeal. I want to get to the stuff that Molly was saying. She said about the family members in there. Yeah, I'm hoping we'll get the info about the impact statements. And yes, not only did the families rip in the impact statement, but in the press conference showed at the beginning of this, Doug Carter really ripped into Baldwin and Rossi as well.
Oh, I need to watch it.
So,
And
I
again,
do too, Molly. I can't let go of Anthony Schatz.
I
That
just
it's just
wanted
too
to,
coincidental.
yeah, going back to Anthony Schatz, Keegan Klein, whatever, because we know for a fact that Anthony Schatz is Keegan Klein. It was admitted. Everything he's been charged with is to do with that. Okay. However, we don't know if anyone else is Anthony Schatz, but you have to also look at previous times that law enforcement has been questioned about Anthony Schatz or Keegan Klein during interviews or during a press conference. And the way they respond to that is very interesting, because Doug Carter, I think he was asked about Keegan Klein, and he said that all he can say about Keegan is that he helped law enforcement gain significant investigative leads in the Delphi case.
Right.
And then when we come to Richard Allen's press conference about his arrest, I think it was the media in the audience questioned Nick McClelland again on the Klein involvement, something about the Kleins, are they involved? And he wouldn't, answer that very straight, but he did make a comment about the tip line, and if anybody has got info about any people or anything they want to share, that he made it very prominent that tip line is still open.
Yeah.
It's just, you have to look at that. It's just it's interesting. And again, with what was said today, I haven't watched it, but just listening to you talk and what was apparently questioned and said, yeah, I just still can't get away from it myself. I
Well,
can't.
and I'm sure we're going to end up with interviews that'll happen with the media individually, right? With Doug Carter, McClelland, right? And family members and stuff like that, that'll end up happening. Although that the Patties have already said that they're not going to speak today. So Shane, you said, who would Allen protect though? Honestly, if there's involvement of somebody who set that up, and especially if it's a ring, right?
Yeah.
A pedophile ring or a CSAM peer-to-peer
Yeah.
ring, then you're going to protect that because you have family that's on the outside still. And you may be scared of something that's going to happen,
Yeah. And I think people sometimes are still a bit too scared to even expand their mind a little bit and consider the fact that could have been the case here. We know at least that a pedophile, Keegan Klein, Anthony Schatz, was talking to Libby. So you can just take that, for what we know. We know at least that she was communicating with a predator, and then she ended up being murdered. And she
right?
was found nude, and all the aspects of that murder do show sexual motivation of some sort. Even if nothing like that was found or discovered, doesn't mean that wasn't the motive.
Right.
So just even putting that together, you have to try to consider that it might be bigger than that. It could have been, we don't
Right.
know.
Well, the press conference that I showed, I went ahead and showed you guys the one that's from the Indiana State Police footage, which I thought would be kind of the better of all of them, because I had heard the one live, and but you could tell that the camera kind of goes a little walkie, that they keep turning it, and then it didn't pick up the sound. So I did hear the questions on one of the news things. You could kind of pick it up, but I want to check if I can get the best quality of those questions And like I said, I'll do shorts for you guys can hear the answers to that. And remember when they were thinking, defense was thinking about calling Keegan Klein to the stand, they were still trying to link him as that he was going to be part of, I don't know why, but they were going to still link him like as this Odinist type group. But remember, I looked into who were the other prisoners that they were calling to come and testify. And, some of them, we knew early on that were with Richard Allen, but there were other prisoners that he called. And when I looked them up, these prisoners were in the jail where Keegan Klein was. And I think that the reason they were going to try to call them was because they could have sat here and said that Keegan Klein told them about participating. Because remember, Keegan Klein put his own self there. So if he thinks that Keegan Klein is the setup person, Anthony Schatz, which from the information, I just don't get that was necessarily him. Because of the two different type of discussions that were happening. One of the Anthony Schatz would talk a certain way, and the other Anthony Schatz would ask her to call him daddy and would say stuff like that. So that one who is speaking to Libby, then you're like, okay, well, one, if they just think it's Keegan Klein's already in jail, and he may not have the charges from that, but they don't have to rush to get him.
Mm-hmm.
But if they believe that it's more serious than that, and it was actually a setup that involved somebody else using Anthony Schatz, and or somebody else there at the crime scene, which is what Keegan told them that his own father did, then they have to have some type of evidence. And I think that's why Mick Leland said in that question, if Richard Allen wants to tell us, right? Because it's like, wait a minute.
You would
So
know.
you're saying that because that would be it, right?
Right.
Are they going to believe Keegan Klein? Well, he's
That
a
would be the
liar
best
and he could say all kinds of shit.
Right. Mm-hmm. And again, when we're talking about Anthony Schatz, like he spoke with Libby's friends after she went missing to say, that he was supposed to meet her. She didn't show up. However, we know Keegan Klein is Anthony Schatz, right? And then when he goes to Vegas, that phone that he had was searching about Delphi, about the murders, watching the Bridge Guy video, audio, whatever was out at the time. I can't remember. I think it might have just been the audio at the time and not the video. And then at the time, after the girls were discovered murdered, Anthony Schatz was still messaging Libby, even though he knew she was dead, because Anthony Schatz is Keegan Klein, right? Even if there was someone else involved in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that make any sense? When we know that it is the same, that is Keegan Klein, right? Anthony Schatz. So why would Anthony Schatz still be messaging Libby to kind of create like he doesn't know she's dead?
Mm-hmm.
But then Keegan Klein is in Vegas searching about her death.
Well, and remember on the search history in 2022, they found that on Richard Allen's search history.
Yeah.
So CJK says if Keegan Klein was involved and Allen knew it, he'd sing like a canary. That's true, CJK. If it was just Keegan Klein, I think he would sing. But remember who was panicking that I showed in the stuff I got from the jail visitor log of Keegan Klein right before 10 days before he gets transferred to go talk to the Indiana State Police and the FBI. Tony Klein is meeting his son like crazy when he hadn't been seeing him for that whole time. For months and months and months, he hadn't been seeing him. All of a sudden, 10 days out, boom, 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 and a bunch in a row before he's being taken in to tell about something, he goes and talks to him. So if it's just Keegan Kline and Keegan Kline's already in jail, you're right, because that could be just Richard Allen saying, yeah, it was Keegan Kline. He set it up. Give me something for it. But if it's somebody else who is using Anthony shots, who they know about other stuff, see, they can know the communications, but they have to know where to log in. They've always had the trouble between Keegan Kline and Tony Kline being at the same house, using the same Wi-Fi, using the same Anthony Shots logins, right? They have to be able to determine the difference between that. And I've always said, you know, I don't think the red Jeep, it may have just been a red herring, literally, to tell us that Keegan Kline said a red Jeep, or did Keegan Kline lie and say red Jeep? Because I don't think that Tony Kline and Keegan Kline would be possibly that stupid to take a glowing red frickin' Jeep and drive it out there. But they could have taken somebody else's PT Cruiser. So if it's, you know, when you have the possibility of two potential PT Cruisers, did, you know, Richard Allen admitted he was coming from Peru, right? He said he came down from Peru. He went and did this, blah, 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 blah. And then he's driving his vehicle and they don't find anything in his vehicle. How do they not find anything at all in his vehicle? Remember, they did say that car was sitting there till 5, but yet he was seen at 4:45. Did that mean he got into another car? Remember, Keegan said he's waiting he's not waiting all the way down to the other place. He said he was waiting for his dad near the graveyard, the cemetery. So did they drive somebody's PT Cruiser there? And then the vehicle and stuff was taken? I mean, I just find it interesting. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think that Doug Carter would have mentioned about all the tentacles and how complicated the case is. Think about this. Think about all the info we just got. And everything about Richard Allen. Okay, let's think of what we know about Richard Allen. What made this more complicated? I don't think, I don't think we've heard anything complicated yet.
Yeah.
I don't think we've heard anything about tentacles of all the connections with it. I don't think we've heard all of it yet.
This is why I feel like Richard Allen isn't the big fish, if you know what I mean. Like, he is Bridge Guy. He was involved in the murders. But I feel like it's not just him. And I feel like most of the investigation and everything we've been told over the years about what is going on, and like you just said, how complicated and everything, I feel like along the way, because of Kathy Shank, they did come across Bridge Guy. And maybe that was what was causing them issues all of these years, is that they realized they've been looking for, you know, the connection maybe with Anthony Shots or online, that kind of thing, looking there, found all of those tentacles, and that's why it's so confusing, but then realized that they're not one and the same. Bridge Guy is a different guy.
Right.
That's what I feel. I feel like they kind of went off course, you know, not by choice, but is because a big piece of info finally came up, but it wasn't about the Anthony Shot stuff, the internet stuff, the other players potentially, but it was for Bridge Guy.
Well, and that's why the complication back at the beginning, where you're like, okay, you know, they had this info, they could have overlooked it, which was the first show I did, you know, talking about, okay, and explained Orion and how it could have got entered, and maybe they entered him as a witness rather than whatever. But then when you realize it never got entered into the Orion system, Okay, so you've had the damn guy's name and shit since 2000, the 18th of 2017, and then you go and like, if that information would have been in Orion, it would have popped out. And that's not the most frustrating, complicated stuff. Somebody wrote cleared on a file that had the wrong name of Richard Allen on it. It had the Richard Allen Whiteman or Whitman, however you pronounce the drive. And somebody wrote cleared on it. And because Kathy Shank had seen and basically entered over 14,000 details, information, and stuff in that, in the database, she's sitting here like, I've never seen this. Had it been sitting there forever? How would have she not seen that? Was it turned in right away? Was it not? Why would it be marked that? And you've got to, also realize that, it may not just be one person. If Richard Allen says, for example, somebody else is there who's using Anthony Shots, and Anthony Shots is basically setting up meetings for guys to meet with underage girls. And these guys are doing it. Remember, Chris Cecil with the Indiana State Police Crimes Against Children said that the Emily Ann and stuff was being used across the country. That it was used across the country. And that there was meetings being tried to be set. So you're not talking, once you cross state lines, that's why you're talking federal.
Yeah, human trafficking also. And you also saw cases recently in Indiana where girls were literally trafficked from a different place, right?
Right.
Yeah, recently.
So yes, Molly, I cannot wait for the transcripts to come out, because then you don't have a tone, you don't have somebody else listening to it. I think when you read through the transcripts and really pay attention to what's being said and review it, then you can, come up with your own feeling about what somebody said and what was going on. CJK, I think other people believe others use absolutely. And I think that the tip line and stuff will show that. But like they said, they're still open. McLeland basically left it open. We're still willing to hear any information and stuff in there. Just because we have Richard Allen doesn't mean we're done. We don't have evidence to say there. But if Richard Allen wants to, I'm just like, oh man, that he would make that statement. The problem is they couldn't make a deal if defense tells him not to. If the defense is telling, don't participate in this, don't try to get your sentence lowered by doing the pre-interview or anything like that. Just, we're saving everything for appeal. My God, I feel like that the defense team that's all they were worried about, was setting up for appeal, because I don't feel like they had the plan for what they were doing. They don't have to prove who the hell they supposedly did it. So, if they want to be like, oh, they're not trying to solve the case and say, oh, it's the Odinist people in there. A defense team only has to create reasonable doubt. And they didn't. They didn't bring up his wife, his mother, to say, oh, he's a good person. He's this, he would never do stuff to children. They never argued any of that. Which I know Paige and I talked about that. It's like, I'm shocked they didn't do any kind of live character witnesses.
Yeah, and even the questions that were given to Richard Allen's sister and daughter were so basic. They were literally like yes or no answers, which they did provide a yes or no. Like there was no detail, like nothing. Like they could have been asked so many things and they weren't.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. I don't know. Yeah, tip line being the same, so certainly the meaning explained. Yeah, I think that I don't know. I just wasn't impressed by his defense attorneys at all. I really wasn't. And as much money as they made and as much money as Baldwin took, I just wasn't impressed with him. I don't think the Delphi word, and when I say Delphi, I even just mean broader than that. I don't think that I definitely know that the CSAM stuff is not done of everybody that they're busting with that. It's continuing. I think they're open still to information that's in there. I think if they're, go with the appeal, they basically took away where Richard Allen wanted to confess and be done. And he, was like, he was, with God now, and now he wanted to say he was sorry to the families, and he wanted to confess. They didn't let that do it. He tried to file an early trial, quick trial. They didn't file it for him. They went to the Supreme Court, where they were like, oh, you're not letting him have a quick trial. Well, they never even filed the document. They had it for 2 months and never filed it for him. And I don't think they followed his wishes. And yeah,
I think you're correct. And when we talk about the defense team too, back to those leaked crime scene images, also remember that the murder sheet confirmed that they had seen the prosecution's crime scene images and the defense's. And the defenses have a slight difference. I think it's the way the girls are kind of blurred in areas, and there's different methods of doing that from the defense's crime scene pictures and the prosecution's. And they know that from the leaked images that they were sent, it was the one the defense used. So I just wanted to point that out again for everybody who may have forgotten that.
Well, and when they talked about that, saying, if that, you are re-victimizing the family, because what if those were your children? And people are doing, because, just recently, a couple days ago, another family member was sent a copy of the crime scene. And what the hell is the point of people? What is the problem with people?
Also, someone who used to be in the true crime community who isn't any longer, he was also sent an image. And it's just like, who the hell is doing this and why? How disgusting. How disgusting.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm just
And just like McLeland said, you don't have to show that to people in order to discuss what your opinion and stuff of the case is. What point do you think you're going to make with that stuff going out? And the one thing that Doug Carter said too, was that, somebody lost their life because of the leaked photos. We have Robert Fortson, who committed suicide because he got that from Westerman. Who Baldwin claimed, oh no, he stole it from my office. He didn't get it from me. And then when it finally came down, he's like, well, yes, I was talking to him and consulting with him on the trial. Totally changed his whole story. That shit got dropped, but it ruined people's lives.
It should show you the type of people that they are, like they're a defense attorney, but in my opinion, I feel like they looked at the case against Richard Allen, knew they were screwed, and literally pulled out the most disgusting moves possible. It was frustrating. You can't tell me that every one of you who read over the defense's filings, each and every one, read through all of them, didn't get frustrated thinking, am I reading the same shit? Yes, I am. Again and again and again.
Right.
It was just like
and multiple times. Frank's
they
hearing
wanted
filing
to
number
tire
1,
him out.
number 2.
Yeah, crazy. I just can't even. Yeah, I just unlike anything I've ever really seen in defense attorneys and how they behave. Like I'm astounded.
Yeah.
It's like a movie or something. Like, how is this real life? It's crazy.
But, when you sit here and, if there was something that was overwhelming that, made me think, I have some doubt whether this guy did it or not. But, when he's the one who comes forward, when he comes forward and says what times he was there, when he comes forward and says, I mean, how do you ignore that the 3 female witnesses who saw a man pass them, that when they show them the photo of Bridge Guy, they say, yep, that's what he was wearing. That was him.
And JSD, you showed people as well, like your footage of when you went to the trails and the bridge and how narrow the pathways are. Like you would look at that person, you would see them.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no way you wouldn't know the look of that person or what they were wearing. You would have, I mean, everyone maybe will forget what someone looks like when they walk past, but they had an encounter with Bridge Guy so that it stuck in their memory.
Well, and like I showed on, and if you haven't watched that episode, I encourage you to do so, because I show as I'm going down the path, I mean, how close by, if somebody's passing you, they have to be. I mean, we're not talking far, and even where Betsy Blair would have seen him standing 50 feet right there on the bridge.
Right. And even
come on.
when she walked back to where she came from and past Abby and Libby walking towards the bridge, she would have got a very clear view of those 2 girls,
Exactly.
She did.
And that's the big thing, because she sees him and then she sees the girls past them. I mean, that tightens the timeline even closer.
Also, I can't remember his name, but the guy who listened to, I think it was over 500 hours of Richard Allen's phone calls. And he confirmed, like, there's no doubt in his mind that is Bridge Guy's voice.
Right.
So that's really an important thing for me. So, yeah.
Well,
we can't forget about the ballistics. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even if you throw out the bullet shit, I think there's enough there, because he's admitted it. There's no other alibi. You got, witnesses who can put him there in the timing. When he has the interview, which the jury got to listen to, he tells them exactly what freaking clothes he's wearing. I mean, he tells the jacket and everything when he's sitting there talking to them.
Yeah, and then McClellan says that they literally found the Bridge Guy's starter kit in his home. So everything that they were possibly looking for, the Bridge Guy was wearing, they found.
I don't think this is over. Obviously, we're going to hear more stuff no matter what because of the appeal. I don't think all of this is potentially over. I do think the possibility, if it may take that they try for an appeal, maybe they're getting denied for appeal, and then that's when the McClellan can say something to the new defense attorneys and Richard Allen, and maybe they'll let Richard Allen hear it of, well, if you do this, we'll reduce your sentence and we'll make you be in a better prison, because we don't know where they're sending him yet. But you can kind of cooperate and have some of that taken care of. I think the reason is, though, you got to think, if he gives up one guy who may have helped him set up the meeting, and it's involving a CSAM group, it's not just that one guy you can be in danger from. He could be in danger from, if it's a peer-to-peer CSAM group, there's a bunch of other guys who don't want to be busted. They don't want to be found out.
And I know it sounds kind of dramatic when I say this, but like literally think of like you know, a drug gang, it's the same thing. Or like, what methods, like if you go against them, like what possibly would happen to you, you know? And that is a real thing that exists. And so is CSAM, human trafficking. These things do exist, and these predators do coincide with each other and literally work things out together as to how to do things and not get caught, you know?
Yeah.
It's because if people were allowed to talk and there would be no consequences, I'm sure a lot more people would come forward with knowledge, you know, like I was in this ring, this happened, I witnessed this, you know, that would be a very often thing that would happen, but it doesn't. And it's because none of them want to go down for that.
Mm-hmm.
They all keep each other's backs, you know?
Well, I think one of the things that I feel like we don't have all the answers is it makes me think of Doug Carter saying about we can't say everything that we know. We can't say all that we know, right? That it's all involved there. And that's why I think we don't know every bit of it. And I think McLeland's statement to the questions, just like Shane had said, leaves that door open.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
I need to watch it.
And you know, I'm continuing to watch and keep track of all of these people who are getting busted and things that are going on, and what's happening with that. So I will create some shorts with some better audio, so that at least the best that's out there of the questions, very specific questions that McLeland answered. I'll also share any interviews and stuff that is individual for Doug Carter or anything like that, because I'm sure these reporters are probably going to ask certain things about that as well. So, yeah, so 130 years, life in prison. So we shall see what happens now.
Yeah. I feel like everyone is sitting here with the same feeling that this is still not over. So yeah, there has to be cause for that.
Well, thank you for jumping up here real quick. And
okay. I literally got home from work. I saw your message and I was like, oh my God. So
I knew you were going to be in there. I said, let me just drop it in there just in case.
yeah. Thank you. I'm glad.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Page.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you guys for being here. Keep an eye out on that stuff. I do have some updates. I think I'm going to make shorts out of them because I don't think they're too long, of info about some other cases that we were following and doing. There's been some movement, at least in Fort Wayne, that in the Kevin Nugent case, that's the cold case. If you remember, we had his father come on. They had not answered anything. He'd been missing forever. And but now they're actually doing that. As you remember, I shared that the Indiana State Police are looking for people who have had missing family members that are still unsolved. And they're starting with the Northeast, which I find interesting as well. Also, the Oakley case it's got postponed several times and delayed for her mom and her boyfriend. So Madison Marshall and her boyfriend, who she was murdered. And I'll have that information and details and stuff coming up as well. And we will continue. I also, please make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. I am not a monetized channel, so I only do it for your love of likes and comments and your subscribe. And I apologize for being gone for a while. I did have to have eye surgery. And the good news is that it seems to be successful thus far. And I'm so happy to see out of this one particular eye much better, because it was my good eye that I had to get it on. So Thank you guys so much. You all mean so much to me. Thank you, Paige, for coming on. Thank you, CJK. And thank you guys for making sure that justice is served daily. And today was the day. Bye.